division, SS1 biology. We are going to briefly summarize the things we've done so far, the major things we've done so far in SS1 biology. We'll start from the basics, the roots, the foundation of biology, characteristics of living things. You've been taught characteristics of living things, we are just going to look at them, then we'll compare. Why do we call certain things living things and some we don't classify them as living things? So let's look at the characteristics of living things. Number one, movement. All living things move. We have movement, we have respiration, nutrition, irritability, growth, excretion, and reproduction. Movement. Do all living things move? Yes. How? Plants move, animals move. The difference is that animals their movement is unlimited. They can run, that's locomotion, they can move from one place to another. But plants are limited in their movement. Most plant movement has to do with growth and then response to stimulus, that's irritability. Then we have respiration. Do all living things respire? What's respiration? Respiration is the process by which organisms use oxygen to break down large molecules to simpler ones. All organisms respire? Yes, they do. So any organism that carries out respiration can be classified as a living thing. Nutrition, food. Do all organisms feed? Yes, they have ways of getting their food. Plants manufacture their food, while animals feed either directly on plants or indirectly on plants. Then irritability, response to change. It can be internal change, it can be external change, that is irritability. Do all animals do this? Yes, all animals respond to changes, and all plants also respond to changes, either by growing upward, the shoot of the plant. It responds to they respond to the direction from which sunlight comes, and then the roots, they respond to the direction of water. So that's irritability. Growth. Do plants and animals grow? Yes. Excretion, removal of waste products. Do plants and animals do this? Yes, they do. Reproduction. Do plants and animals reproduce like ones? Yes, they do. Offsprings that look like them, yes, they do. So we can see clearly that all living things carry out this. Now we are going to look at some organisms, and then we are going to say if these organisms are actually living things. Then if they are living things, do they do all this? Example, let's look at amoeba. Is amoeba a living thing? Yes. Why? How? How do we prove that amoeba is a living thing? Can amoeba move? Yes. Amoeba is found in water. It can move. It has what we call pseudopodia that helps it to move from one place to another. So it's a living thing. Does it respire? Yes, through diffusion. It respires. It gives out, there's exchange of gas between the surrounding using its mitochondria. Do they feed? Yes. And amoeba is an animal. It's animal-like. It's animal-like. It's under Protista kingdom. It's animal-like. So it feeds on other smaller microscopic organisms that are found in water. Irritability, does it respond to changes in the environment? Yes, it does. Growth, do they grow? They grow. Do they excrete? Do they carry out excretion? Yes. The excess water that goes into the amoeba is given out using the contractile vacuum. Reproduction, does it reproduce? Yes, it does. So amoeba is a living thing. Bacteria is a living thing. Virus is a living thing. So they all belong to this group. We can call them living things. They are not non-living things. Then we'll move on to classification of living things. How do we classify living things? What are those things? What are those characteristics that help us to classify living things? We have 5 groups of living things. We use what we call the kingdoms to classify them. We have the Monera kingdom, we have the Protista kingdom, we have the fungi, we have plantae, and we have animalia. Now there are some organisms I'll mention and you think naturally they should have been under plant kingdom or under animal kingdom, but we put them in these other smaller groups. You are going to look at their characteristics, and the characteristics will help us to know why we place them in those kingdoms. Let's start with Monera. Under Monera we have bacteria, we have blue-green algae. Why do we place them under Monera? Let's look at the characteristics of Monera kingdom. Animals in Monera kingdom do not have a definite nucleus. So we call them prokaryotic animals, prokaryotic or prokaryotes, because they do not have a definite nucleus. So bacteria belongs to this group. Blue-green algae belongs to this group. Not only that they do not have a definite nucleus, also they have the simplest cell structure. They have the simplest cell structure. That's why we call them Monera. We call it, this is Monera kingdom. We said blue-green algae, and we have bacteria. They belong to this group. In ascending order, the next is the Protista. The Protista is also a unicellular organism, just like the Monera. But it is a eukaryotic organism. Why do we call it eukaryotic? Because it possesses a nucleus, unlike the Monera. It possesses a nucleus, and it has a complex cell structure, unlike Monera. Not only this, it also has other characteristics that makes it different from the Monera. Some of the organisms that belong to Protista, they have structures that help them to move, like flagellum, pseudopodia, cilia. They help them to move from one place to the other. Under the Protista, we have different phylum. We have the Protophyta, those ones that behave like plants. We have the Protozoa, those ones that behave like animals. We have the Euglenophyta, those ones that have both plant and animal structure. We have the Chrysophyta, those ones, we call them the golden algae. And then we have the Pyrophyta. The Pyrophyta, we call them dinoflagellates. They are all under Protista kingdom. Then we have the fungi. I said we are mentioning them in the ascending order. This is Monera. We've done Protista. Then we have the fungi. The fungi is multicellular. This is unicellular. This is multicellular. It is most of them are multicellular. Only a few are unicellular. Very few. So most times you just hear fungi, multicellular. Not only is it multicellular, it has cell wall. But the difference is that the cell wall is called the Chitin cell wall. It has what we call Chitin cell wall. That the cell wall is made of chitin. Not only that, it does not have a chloroplast like plants, even though plants have cell wall. And then the mode of feeding is either some of them are parasitic and some of them are saprophytes. Saprophytes are organisms that feed on dead organisms. So those are the characteristics of fungi. Under fungi we have mold, we have rhizopus, we have mushroom under fungi kingdom. Then under plantae, the next one is plantae. What are the characteristics of plantae? Plantae has cell wall. But what type of cell wall? Cellulose cell wall. That's the plantae kingdom. It has a cellulose cell wall, and it is also multicellular. Not only is it multicellular, it has what we call the chloroplast. So you can see the difference between plantae and fungi. This has chitin cell wall, this has cellulose cell wall. But the similarity, most of them are multicellular, this is also multicellular. This does not have chloroplast, this has chloroplast, that is plantae. Under plantae we have the Talophyta, that's the smallest group. The Talophyta, no roots, no stems, Spirogyra. If you have seen Spirogyra before, you know Spirogyra, we find it in water, damp places, they grow in damp places. Spirogyra does not have roots, does not grow stems, no leaves, nothing. So the Spirogyra is a typical example of Talophyta, the smallest group of plantae kingdom, followed by what we call the Bryophyta. The Bryophyta, they have what we call rhizoids. They grow on damp walls, damp surfaces, especially walls. They have false leaves and stems. Example, we have moss plants and we have ferns. Then the biggest group of plantae, the Tracheophyta. Under Tracheophyta, we have seed-producing plants and non-seed-producing plants. Tracheophyta means plants that have vascular bundles. They are able to conduct water, like the roots can conduct water from the soil to other parts. So we call them Tracheophyta. They have vascular bundles. Then finally, let's go to the biggest kingdom, the Animalia. And that's where we are going to dwell on, the Animalia, the animal kingdom. The Animalia starts from Porifera, Coleotrenta, all the way to the Chordata. Actually, there are two groups. We have the Invertebrata, those ones that do not have backbones, and we have the Vertebrata, that's the Chordata. They all have different characteristics. From the smallest, we have organisms we call sponges, jellyfish, like Coleotrenta, that's where the jellyfish belongs. We have the flatworms, we have the Annelida, we have the Arthropoda, Mollusca, Echinoderms, all belong to this Invertebrata. Then the Vertebrata is the Chordata. Chordata means animals that have backbone. We are going to look at the largest group under this Invertebrata and the largest group under Vertebrata. What is the largest group under Invertebrata? That is the Arthropoda. That's the largest phylum. Arthropoda. What are the characteristics of arthropods? One, arthropods are exoskeletal organisms. They have exoskeleton. They have jointed appendages. If you forget anything, don't ever forget this. They have jointed appendages. We have 4 classes of arthropoda. The first class, we have Insecta. We have Insecta, we have Arachnida, Myriapoda, and we have the Crustacea. These are the 4 classes under the arthropoda. In the similarity that they all have jointed appendages. But the jointed appendages differ. Like Insecta, insect has 3 body parts, while these other ones have 2 body parts. So we say this has 3 body divisions, these ones have 2 body divisions, but they all have exoskeleton. Then there's another difference. Insecta has 3 pairs of walking legs. Arachnida has 4 pairs of walking legs. Myriapoda has numerous walking legs. And then Crustacea, they have 5 pairs of walking legs. Let's look at examples of each. Insecta, we have mosquito, housefly. They belong to this group. Then Arachnida, under Arachnida, we have spider. We have scorpion. They belong to Arachnida. Remember I said they have 4 pairs of walking legs. Then under Myriapoda, we have centipede, we have millipede. They have numerous walking legs. Then crustaceans, we have crabs, we have crayfish. They belong to this group. They have 5 pairs of walking legs. They all belong to the arthropoda. Remember I said arthropoda is the largest group under Invertebrata. Then under Vertebrata, we have the Chordata. Let's look at the classes that make up the Chordata in their correct order, in ascending order. We have the Pisces, we have the Amphibia, amphibian. We have the reptilian. We have mammalian. Sorry, we have aves. Then we have mammalian. Pisces. They have their body covered with scales. They have streamlined body. They have lateral lines on their body. They are mostly found in water. Example of Pisces, we have fishes. They use gills for respiration. Then under amphibian, we have toads. They have moist skin, but no scales. Remember, fishes have scales. These ones do not have scales on their body. So these ones, their young ones use, at the larval stage, they use gills for respiration. But at the adult stage, they use lungs, and they also use their moist skin for respiration. They have webbed digits that help them to move in water. These ones have fins for movement in water. Then the reptilia. The reptilia have tough scales on their body, that cover their body, that cover their skin. They have tough scales that cover their skin, very tough. This helps to conserve water. Example of reptilia, we have gecko, we have lizards, crocodiles, alligator. They are all under reptilia. Then we have aves, birds. What are the characteristics of the aves? They use lungs for respiration. They have scales on some parts of their body. They have feathers to cover their body, and they also we call them homoiothems. That is, they are warm-blooded animals. Then the mammalia. Mammalia, they have lungs for respiration. They have 4-chambered hearts. They have hairs all over their body that helps to keep them warm. They have sweat glands. So those are characteristics of mammals. So this is the largest phyla. It is the largest phyla in the entire animal kingdom. Now finally, let's take 2 questions. Number 1, why is virus not classified as a living thing? Virus actually is a living thing, but most times it's not classified as a living thing because it only behaves as a living thing when it is in a living cell. If you want to look at the characteristics of virus, every other characteristic of virus, you would have placed it under the Monera kingdom. But because the virus behaves as a living cell, as a living thing, only when it is in a living cell, it is not under any of these kingdoms. It's not under Monera, we've not put it under the Protista, we've not put it under any of the kingdoms, but it's unicellular. Then another question is on binomial nomenclature. We've been talking about classifying animals. Now, who introduced this binomial nomenclature? Is a scientist whose name is Carolus Linnaeus, a botanist. He introduced the method of naming animals using 2 names in Latin, using the genus and using the species name. I'm sure you've come across names like Ipomia botata. That is the Latin name for potato. Oryza sativa. That is for rice. Musca domestica for housefly. And so on. We just take these 3. So Carolus Linnaeus introduced this method of naming living things using the genus and the species name. Now there is a format for writing this name. The genus comes first, followed by the species name. The genus starts with capital letter and the species starts with small letter. And finally, you underline after writing the name. So this is the format for writing the genus and the species name. Thank you.